Okay, everybody, welcome to the UpAGear Team Cast number 2, and our reflections on, still in the world of rugby, on the final, the disappointing final from an England perspective. But before we go into that, let me introduce you to the team, or get the team to introduce themselves. So who have we got on there? Have we got Jerry?
Yes, Dave, I'm here. Looking forward to it.
Welcome, Jerry. And James?
Yep, Dave, I'm here, speaking to you from the Outer Hebrides, where the snow is coming down and the wind has gone away, but only briefly. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. Okay, well, hopefully not too much wind on the podcast. And Di.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, happy to be on this and looking forward to it.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Di. And I believe we've got Mr. Willoughby, Mike Willoughby.
You have indeed, yeah. Looking forward to this discussion, must admit.
Fantastic. Is that everybody? I think it is. So let me open it up then. And before I guess we get into what next for England and Eddie Jones, but let's start with reflections on the final. What was in play for you guys, and why were we left so disappointed? Who wants to kick us off?
Shall I go?
Yeah, go.
My humble opinion, as a non-rugby aficionado, but was an avid viewer of the whole tournament and every time England play, by the way, I just felt that coming into the final, we were probably regarded as favourites. That always brings additional pressure. England expects every man to do his duty and all that. With that comes nerves, and I thought that evidenced itself in some very poor handling early on, some very poor passing early on, which was most unlike the team that had performed throughout the tournament to that point. On the other side of the coin, South Africa, passionate in the singing of the national anthems. We were talking about that, Di, a little bit earlier. Yeah. So the energy and the passion, they were up for it. They really wanted to win. Not that we didn't. But I guess they were going into it with perhaps a little bit less pressure, a little bit less expectation, nothing to lose. And subliminally then, subconsciously, they are more relaxed. And they went in with an aggressive approach right from the start. And I think that affected the way in which the game played out very early on. They also were able to somehow, probably following Carl Sinclair's knockout, they just seemed to be able to win the scrums and force penalties, and we didn't adapt for some reason. I'm sure the clever people that know rugby and the way that tactics are played out, maybe Dave or James can say what they believe happened in those scrums. But we just seem to be falling for the same trick every time. We got too far behind. You lose momentum. You continue to lose momentum. They gain confidence on an upward spiral, and we just get too far behind, and then you're demoralised and you lose. So that would be my starter.
Yeah. And that's really rather extraordinary, really, because if you think about the previous week and how we played with New Zealand, you would have thought we would have been totally demoralised from that match. If you remember, one of the things that we made remarks about then was the fact that we hadn't been awarded 2 tries. Now, you would absolutely expect something like that to knock the confidence of the team, but actually they were almost untouchable, and they just picked themselves up and turned it around. Whereas this match, you're absolutely right, Jerry, right from the word go, there was that absolute sense of, you could almost feel that anxiety and nervousness that was coming from the team. Whether that's true or not, but that's how it came across watching it on the television. And let's face it, I was constantly going in and out of the room because I found it so difficult to watch, as I'm sure other people did too. But the South Africans just had that absolute zealousness. You could feel they were up for it come what may.
Mm.
As we said earlier, you're absolutely right. When I was watching the national anthem, the captain of South Africa, I thought he was remarkable, absolutely fabulous. He sang his heart out to his anthem, and you're just thinking, my gosh, this man is so proud to be here representing his country. And it really came over us. He really had so much self-belief and passion. And again, you know, when you think about his very humble, you know, origins and where his life's been, that's a fantastic thing that he's done so well in spite of. So those are my initial thoughts.
Mm.
Yeah. Can I come in? It's James here. I'd balance this up a bit. I think some really interesting team human dynamics going on here that one needs to think through. You know, it seemed to me, I think everybody recognised around the world that England against New Zealand was a phenomenal game, and that England raised itself, and without anybody wanting to admit it in the English team, there is no doubt, I think, that they went into that game with a subconscious, if not top of the brain type feeling that this was going to be the game to win, that beating New Zealand was, in effect, their World Cup final. And although we all said at the time that they came off the pitch after that game and did all the right things to focus themselves on the final in the coming week, my sense of it was that actually deep underneath in people's hearts and hidden well away was this sense that we've done something really remarkable in beating New Zealand, and that makes us, you know, that puts us where we want to be for the next game, and now we'll concentrate. And I think, you know, to me, what was really interesting is I don't think it was bang from the start of the game. I think what happened was that the Sinclair incident, being knocked out, and one or two other little bits of bad luck in the first couple of minutes, threw people completely, because that subconscious assumption was assaulted in the first few seconds of the game. And to me, what it shows is that when you're really operating at the absolute bounds of quality, everybody is trained to their best. It only takes a little bit of luck and a little bit of psychology to go the wrong way, and things can change in a really dramatic fashion because the tolerances are so fine. And I'd be interested to know what people think, but my suspicion is that the coaches and indeed the team members did a huge amount to get this right in the build-up to that game, but that sometimes a little bit of luck goes against you, and at these very high levels of tolerance of quality at its very best, that can be enough to throw the whole psychology of the game. I don't know what you think.
I agree with you, James. I mean, the thought that I had in those first few minutes was, as soon as we lost that player, they got their first 3 points on the board. We just lost confidence, and we forgot what we were there to do, and lost track of where we were trying to go, and just couldn't seem to recapture it. I've been using the expression, they really played to their strengths and on our weaknesses right from the kickoff, and effectively they outplayed us, they outfought us, and they outfought us as well. They were good, they were solid, exceptionally strong, and unfortunately we just couldn't cope with it and couldn't change our style to adapt to them either, which is a bit of an issue.
I just wonder, and having seen an interview with Eddie Jones since the match, where he's talked about maybe he didn't change things and he went with loyalty after the All Blacks performance, more so than actually the ruthlessness of picking a side and the tactics that were going to be most effective against South Africa, and so I wonder whether that played some small part in it. And of course, I don't think we'll ever know what the difference in the preparation leading up to the final was compared to leading up to the semi-final. But again, a bit of a sense was that the preparation was, well, they certainly had a bigger run in, hadn't they? Oh, mind you, that was through into the quarters, so they had a little bit more time and sort of preparation and so on. But did they do the things that they needed to do? There was certainly quite a lot of PR that was going on that was over and above where they'd been on the run into the semi-final. So some of my reflection was, had they caught up in their own PR a little bit and actually lost sight of some of the basics that had got them such a great result in the semi.
As you say, David, it's very hard to know, isn't it, exactly what was going on inside the team without having somebody who was there to analyse it. And one suspects that any coach who's been so close to success as Eddie Jones was with that team is going to walk away from a defeat of that sort pretty cross with himself and looking to find quite rightly and professionally looking to find the reasons for that failure. But I part of me is beginning to think that one can overcomplicated everything that went on. I mean, that when you've got two teams performing at such a very high level, the margins and the tolerances are very, very narrow indeed. And most of it is about the psychology. And the psychology of groups of people is extremely difficult to get a grip. And over time, you can treat that group of people in the right way to get, on average, top quality performance. But it may be that you just can't always account for all the factors, those sort of little things that happen, and get it 100% right all the time. And my own sense of this is almost certainly what happened is that England's gut reaction was after the New Zealand game, deep down in their hearts, they thought they got there, and they knew they couldn't think that way, and they were well prepared not to think that way, but it was very deep ingrained in their minds. And when something went wrong, I'm not sure there was much that could be done about it.
Okay. Yeah. So certainly not going to disagree with that. I think there was there were all sorts of things in play. I suppose just bringing the focus onto the winners, actually, South Africa, and they certainly played their best match of the tournament. From what I could see, they didn't do anything terribly surprising. They actually played the same game that they played all the way through, and despite in the last probably 20-25 minutes, they allowed them to become far more expansive than they'd been so far in the final. That was purely because the game had opened up and England were sort of going for things that otherwise they wouldn't have gone for, I guess. But a really impressive South Africa performance, because they didn't change anything. They just went and delivered the game that they'd been playing all tournament. Very disciplined. Clearly, a lot of trust and clear understanding of each other. I wonder what reflections the team have got on South Africa as a successful World Cup winning team.
Yeah, certainly the communication with the team seemed to be extremely good. I think for all of them, the bond was absolutely staggering, and Leclerc again was all over the pitch, just everywhere, and they almost instinctively knew where he was, and he knew where they were. I mean, that guy was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I thought South Africa played an outstanding match. I mean, particularly in defence. I can't remember. Jerry, we were talking about this the other day. How many attempts did we have to try and get that try over the line? It was something like 20 or 22 in their part, wasn't it? And we just could not budge them. We were literally inches away, but they kept going at them, kept going at us, and actually forcing the ball back. So, we didn't manage to, get through that defence. It was incredible to watch.
It was a massive number of phases. I think it got up to about 26. I
can't remember how many phases. Yeah, that's what I was trying to remember. Huge number.
Yeah, and I think you saw the exasperation creep in at that particular point, because they lost the belief that they were going to punch through, because they went out to the backs at that point in a pretty unplanned way, actually. It struck of desperation at that point, which then, all the good work they'd done to win the yardage to get up into South Africa's 22 had really broke down fairly quickly, because it almost felt like a lack of belief at that point that they could punch through.
They had a great game plan as well, didn't they? If you think about the scrums and a number of those they brought down to win the penalties, that gave them a great starting point for them to build on. And literally, as you're saying there, I mean, the backs were just solid. There was so much trust. There was so much communication going on between them. And it was awesome, to be fair, to watch them and see the skill they had and the the strength that he brought in numbers.
Yeah, definitely, and yeah. So I think a really impressive South African performance, and it sort of connects into James's point about the psychology. I mean, it was that South African wall that was so resilient that broke the spirit of the English players, and pretty much demolished it. We had a brief flurry back in the second half, didn't we? But again, they weathered that, and we couldn't get through beyond that. So I guess in terms of the sort of game analysis, we've sort of picked our pieces from it. We're all feeling a little bit bruised, I guess, since as Patriots. But so what next? If you're Eddie, assuming it's going to be Eddie moving forward, then what needs to happen? Because if we look forward in 4 years' time, then you can only see other teams getting stronger and consolidating. The All Blacks will come back from that position. They're not going to want to be the whipping boys of the English, albeit we have beaten them in cricket as well this year as well. So hey, we've got a bit of a good result in New Zealand. Really looking forward to going there in a few weeks' time. That'll be fab. So they're going to come back. South Africa will get stronger based on that sort of consolidating their position, and away they go. France have got a very exciting side, young side at the moment, and we're really saw the World Cup as a for them just an opportunity to blood some players and get some experience. What's your take on where England need to go? Because I sense we need to reset, we need to recalibrate. It's not about the same again, because the same performance is next time will, probably won't get us out the group stages. Actually, how do we hit those levels? And what would be the early indicators for you that Eddie's got a clear idea of what that needs to look like?
I'll start you with this, Dave, and it's an observation about England rugby. And very much the English way of doing things in much more than just sport, actually, which is that, we are, in this game, in terms of population, one of the two big nations that play on ourselves and the French, I suppose, and therefore we have we should have more players to choose from. And there seems to me to be a very English approach to the way that we work, which is that it's extraordinarily structured and very carefully planned, and we believe in sport, in the detail, in having the training and having the fitness and having the strategies and having the plays and the tactical level, and England has always been very inclined to pay to particular patterns, and those patterns have changed over the years, but there's always been that. Whereas we have very often, as a country, been beaten by smaller nations that have managed to do it, very much on the basis of fire in the heart, of spirit. Now that may be an overgeneralization, but it seems to me to have happened time and time again to England over the years. And I worry sometimes about this in sport, because it's only an hour or thereabouts on the pitch that you're actually playing for, and spirit, team spirit, and individual fire, it can overturn a better team that's more skilled and more capable. Whether that translates into a business environment where you're talking about teams that compete on a sort of constant basis, that there is no stop just because you lose a particular battle tonight. You still have to go into work tomorrow and get on. Well, it's not quite true with World Cup rugby campaigns. But I just worry whether England has got to learn to put fire in its belly in a slightly different way, as we saw the South Africans do to take us on.
Yeah, I tend to, somebody who spends a bit of their time in and around the world of professional rugby in England. I definitely hear what you're saying, James, because there's a huge amount of effort and focus that goes in on that sort of preparation and that repeat of what needs to happen. It's about the strategy, it's about the tactics, it's about all the training that gets you into that space. And I think where rugby games at the very top level tend to be won and lost is that the teams have they all have a good strategy. Yeah, they'll all have well worked through tactics, developed based on who the opposition are and what the perceived weaknesses are, and how they need to adapt their strategy in order to work on the pitch to develop those tactics. But it's the in-game adaptation, it's the in-game response, along with that unity, psychology, and team belief that I think is what defines international or determines results at the top end of international sport. I don't know, Jerry, whether you've got any reflections on that, because I'm guessing the world of limiting beliefs comes in a little bit.
Yeah, the risk is that we dwell on the fact that we didn't quite step up on at the final. I think we should reflect on the fact that the team did really well to get there, and they were outstanding throughout the tournament. Maybe they were a bit burnt out mentally. You see people in different walks of life drawing on such tremendous reserves and having very little left when it comes to the final push. And that's where they're not able to put it over the line or get it over the line. I think we also have to reflect on the fact that you do not win every time. You can't win all the bids and pitches that you do in business. Somebody else will come around the corner with something that you don't have. You don't even know about it, but you can prepare as best you can for it. The other team win on merit. Now, that was what we saw in the final. So, coming back to it, I think there's a couple of things. One, we've got to rekindle the fire in the belly, from James's point, from acknowledging how brilliantly we played compared to the way we did in the previous World Cup and in one or two other tournaments. So, there's a lot of great things to take away. And I think that we've got to become somehow more capable to adapt in the face of pressure and adverse situations. Keep the blue head, I think, is the phraseology used these days. And if we can do that, build on the strengths, understand what the other teams are doing, as you've said, in their strategies. We're going to be playing lots and lots of games in the run into the next one, obviously. So I just think we've got to build on the success and draw from that to maintain and grow our belief and confidence.
I think there's the other piece in there is using the dear old UpAGear process is a reflection on what's actually happened, look on the things that did well, not so well, and really draw the lessons out that are there. To move them forward again. And if I was in Eddie's shoes, that would be the first thing I'd be doing, be sitting down there with the team and just going through, okay, guys, so what did we do really well going right the way through the tournament? What didn't we do so well that we could have improved upon? And use that as a game starting point for the next region. But definitely the rekindling of the flame to enable us to get to where we need to be for the next time round.
Okay, so I guess that Mike, you've sort of started us into the as we draw to a close on the podcast, which is if we had one bit of advice to Eddie and the crew, it would be. Let me pose that question to the team. Who wants to chuck in an answer on that?
So I guess, Dave, that in my head, it's the old, if at first you don't succeed, try again. I mean, you simply can't afford, in sport or in the commercial world, just to throw your hands up in the air and scream. It's very easy as an Englishman to be hugely depressed by what just happened. But I think Jerry's just made the point that actually they had a bloody good tournament. They did extraordinarily well. The margins were always going to be very fine. There are some hugely competent teams out there, just as there are many competent companies in the world that compete with one another, and you will not win everything. and if you can be, intelligent about it, and retain your positivity, and keep trying, then what you're really wanting to do in the general world is stay in that leading group. I mean, you may be really lucky and lead it for years, as the New Zealanders have done, but just to be there or thereabouts all the time and constantly giving your chance of being in the front is really the best that we can any of us hope for, and you have to remain positive.
Can I just say, James, what I love about what you just said is the word try appears 3 times in that.
And strangely for England, didn't appear at all in the final.
So if at first you don't succeed, or a try and another try and try again.
That would have solved the problem, Jerry, wouldn't it? Yeah, thanks.
Where were you?
Very helpful. Very helpful.
Time.
Excellent. Yeah.
Bless
I love that, James. I think, to be fair, there was a little bit more depth to your answer than just score more than the opposition do. But
wasn't entirely my point, but I'm prepared to take it.
But it's like when you hear the footballers at the end, well, if we'd have scored a goal, then we would have won.
Well, there we go. Okay.
Resilience, isn't it?
Thanks for that wisdom. Di.
Yeah, I was just saying, it's all about resilience as well. I think this is a key piece of learning for them. Stand tough, stay strong, and get your mental resilience up and running. And, they did, as you've all said, they played brilliantly throughout the tournament. They've got a lot to congratulate themselves about, and they can only take that positive mental attitude forward. So, let's hope that, Eddie continues to do his magic and make sure he keeps them on the right track.
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mike, anything to add to your UpAGear review? I think, were you pitching in to do that? Because I'll fight you for it. But
well, a gentleman called Ralph Peters has done it for England in the past, and I'd love for us to be able to do that sort of thing again. For me, it's not to be afraid to change tack, not to be afraid to change the way you're doing things to get the result you're looking for. Be able to change when you need to change.
Mm.
Okay. Good. And I think my bit of advice for Eddie would and the boys would be to say to actually take the time to work out how you channel that experience and learn from that experience at an individual and a collective level. So there's a bit of that, bit of the UpAGear approach from a team point of view, but I think very much at an individual level. And there's a big bit of personal psychology in there for all of those players, because the majority of that team will be at the next World Cup with us, and they're still quite a young set of guys. And if they can learn to channel the disappointment, channel the learnings from that, work out what those incremental improvements across each of their individual games are. If our front row can improve their scrummaging by 5%, for example, that would go some way, because combined with then their ability in the breakdown, or the ability to run with the ball, would make them, arguably, the best front row in the world. So it's those sort of things. It's fine, the incremental stuff, but from a psychological point of view, how do you learn from the disappointment, channel the disappointment constructively into improving yourselves as players?
Totally.
I'm guessing that's in play. So any final thoughts? And I suppose a cheeky one: who's going to win the Six Nations?
England.
Thank you, Mike. Any substance based on that, or just
pure patriotism? Patriotism. A little bit. Can I say it?
That was a Freudian slip there.
It was.
Thanks, Mike.
My total belief in England. There you go.
Okay, cool.
They should do.
Yeah.
By sole prejudice, they should win.
Yeah. I was with the Welsh rugby union yesterday, and they believe if they can get all the players fit again, then they'll give us a run for our money. But I didn't argue that too much, because I wanted to be able to get back over the bridge.
Great stuff.
Anyone else? Closing thoughts. Can we do it in the Six Nations? And should we stick with Eddie?
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely. He's a fantastic coach. He did us proud all the way through, and I think he'll continue to do so. He just needs to do what he's always done and stick to his game tactics. And as you said earlier, Dave, maybe on this occasion he's stuck to a bit of, the old boys club and stuff like that, stuck to loyalty rather than considering the tactics he's always used. And that astonished me, actually, because having watched him take such copious notes, or so it seemed when I was watching the Wales-South Africa match, I expected him to pull something out from up his sleeve again. So, yeah, let's stick with him.
Excellent. Okay. So I guess on that note, keep going, Eddie. We've got your back. You may be from the other side of the world, but we believe in you. And let's England live to fight another day. Take the lessons out of it, and I guess I'd much rather have somebody who's leading a group who can be honest about the lessons that they've learned from it, and actually change their approach, flex, and get better as a result of that experience, than feel like we have to do these sort of classic soccer approach and change the manager every 5 minutes.
Right.
Excellent. Okay, so I guess that wraps us up on the UpAGear Team Cast number 2, and we'll be back with a new topic, probably outside of the world of rugby, on a podcast near you very soon. Thank you.